So let me ask the question then. In light of all that we've been learning about Jesus, his life, his birth, his death, his resurrection, and in all that we've been learning of what the Bible teaches us about the resurrection and our own hope for eternity, what should our attitude be towards issues of life and death? You know, we've seen already that it's not a punishment and it's not something that we as Christians need to fear because we have a promise of eternal life. But we might actually then ask the questions about what does that mean and what does it look like? As we think about this question, it does lead us to ask questions about our own mortality as believers. How do we approach the issue of our own life and death as Christians? Maybe a good place to start with this is to look at Paul. Paul wrote a large part of the New Testament. And a large part of what he wrote from prison, and he wrote from places where he was under pressure and under persecution. And one of his sort of triumphant letters is the letter to the church in Philippi, which sort of just exudes this sense of joy and excitement about being a Christian. And he opens it up, and in the beginning of the first chapter, he says this, I eagerly expect and hope that I will in no way be ashamed, but will have sufficient courage so that now, as always, Christ will be exalted in my body, whether by life or by death. For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain. If I am going to go on living in this body, this will mean fruitful labour for me. Yet what shall I choose? I don't know. I'm torn between the two. I desire to depart and be with Christ, which is better by far, but it is more necessary for you that I remain in the body. It's quite an interesting sense that Paul has here of actually his longing and his desire to be with Jesus versus the sense of responsibility he feels for the here and now. What we can learn from Paul when we look at Paul's experience is that we can face issues of life and death with joy and not with fear. And we can stand in the promises that we see Paul writing in Romans 8, that nothing separates us, from Christ, not life nor death. There is a tremendous sense that we can have confidence that whatever waits for us, we can give confidence to others in the way that we live, but also we can have that sense of, my life can count for more than I could ever imagine once I find myself completely surrendered to Jesus. But if we can face our own life and death as Christians, of facing it with joy and with confidence, how do we as Christians handle the death of Christian friends and relatives? For those of us who are believers who've lost loved ones, there is a sense of real pain when you lose somebody that you love. When you lose a parent or a spouse or a child, there is a real genuine heartache. And anyone who's ever been bereaved knows that pain and that sense of sorrow and loss. Yet the hope that we have as Christians is that if somebody who knows Jesus dies, we, whilst experiencing that sense of pain of loss, can also face it with a sense of joy, knowing where they are. It's not a lack of faith to grieve a loved one. We see Jesus when he goes to the grave of Lazarus, weeping at the loss of his friend, the emotion that's there. And in Acts 8 and verse 2, after Stephen has been martyred, the church comes and they bury his body, and it says that they mourned for him. The loss of a loved one means the loss of companionship, the loss of friendship, the loss of a sense of friendship, companionship. All those things are very, very genuine. But we can face that with hope. We can face that with joy, knowing that our loved one is going to their eternal rest. They're going to that sense of being with Jesus and looking forward to all the hope of the resurrection that we've already talked about. For someone to lose a loved one who knows Jesus, we need to face the reality of loss, but also can celebrate the sense of hope of what will be.